It's been 5 years, bruh. Time really flies when you don't know you're having fun. Hope you guys are doing okay. It's a very stressful time in the world, and I don't know about you, I like to retreat into my hobbit hole of filmmaking to keep sane during such bizarre moments of history. Well, that and drink a lot of coffee, causing major dehydration. So good. So painful. But back to the movie making thing. If you're new to this channel, my name is Julius. I'm a filmmaker. I'm someone who has made a lot of films over the course of his life. And last year I worked on a full feature film about a superhero in Los Angeles who's an immigrant who takes on a vigilante persona to fight the forces of fascism. Has nothing to do with what's going on in real life. It's called Poncho, and here's a link to it right here. The reason I bring that up in a video about the Snyder Cut is for several reasons. But before I even get into all that gooey stuff, before it gets really kind of heavy, viewer discretion advised, I might get a little emotional during this video. I want to talk a little bit about Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, this is a film that on the channel you'll find that there are a couple conversations about this film, about the theatrical cut of Justice League and the director's cut, and I talked to some really cool people about those versions of the films. It's been 5 years since that film came out, and honestly, my opinion on it has changed drastically since its initial release. I really liked it upon its initial release. I didn't think it was perfect. I still don't think it's perfect. But there was something really empowering about that cut of the film while watching it with a bunch of the homies and everything. And especially given the terrible circumstances of Zack Snyder having to step away in the first place. Coming back to finish up his vision to make sure that it was out there and secure, especially given the devotion from his fans. There's something really heartwarming about that movie's existence. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these guys who's like a real big Zack Snyder fan. I appreciate him as a cinematographer probably more than a storyteller. There are films of his that I really like and really respond to. I wasn't a fan of the Snyderverse in general. I watched Batman vs Superman the Ultimate Cut recently for the first time, and I found myself not really digging it, not really missing what used to be for DC. Which is why when the Snyder Cut came out, I was shocked that I actually really liked it and really enjoyed it. And I saw a lot of the payoff that was missing in the earlier films that Snyder had made. When I watched it, I was really shocked about how well a lot of those characters were represented. Because for me, they were fighting an uphill battle just with the castings alone. Ezra Miller's Flash, I thought was really odd casting, and even in his own film I didn't like the characterization of Barry Allen, but I really responded to it in the Snyder Cut. I felt that there was the nice blend of the oddness of the character and some of the swagger that that character has. There are some really pure Barry Allen moments in that film. Cyborg being the kind of underdog of that whole story, especially in terms of the story of him and his father's strained relationship and how he looks at himself as a monster. It's powerful, and it's insane how much they cut out of the theatrical cut when so much of what's in the Snyder Cut is as compelling as it is. I really dug Aquaman. I thought they got kind of the fun nature of it, and I saw where they were headed in terms of his own film, and I understood better while watching the Snyder Cut of how he got to that point of kind of being a warrior that's also kind of lost from his family, of his society, but also kind of chill and can have a fun time while doing a superhero thing. And the big two that were the ones that I was really worried about in the Snyder Cut were Batman and Superman, because those were the characters that I thought had the most damage done to them in the films previous. Superman being a key one, that he's supposed to represent hope, but every time we see him, he's not hopeful, he's dreary, he's tortured. Superman, I don't agree with that interpretation of the character. And as for Batman, I was really liking Ben Affleck as Batman in Batman vs Superman. Especially upon my rewatch, I thought he did a fantastic job in the role. But then we saw this fool kill a whole bunch of people, and that's just too hot topic edgelord for my taste. I'm not a fan of that kind of Batman, to be quite honest. But I thought they redeemed both characters in the Snyder Cut. Like, I was in tears during my first viewing of the film when you saw Clark reunite with his mother. That I said to my friends while I was watching it, they finally got it. That was pure Superman. Something we would see on Smallville or Superman and Lois. The Christopher Reeve films had that kind of aura. And I especially love the moment where Batman talks to Alfred before going off into the final battle and saying that he's relying on faith. that was pure Batman for me. So yeah, aside from the last 30 minutes of the film, I really thought they got it perfectly. I honestly, I thought that it was really great. I was like, okay, I want to see more. Obviously, they have discontinued the Snyderverse and everything. For me, that's fine because I found closure in the Snyder Cut, and I'm hoping Zack Snyder found closure as well. It sounds like he has, especially from a lot of recent interviews where he's talked about the film. And this is a side thing, but I really appreciate that he supports James Gunn's vision, because James Gunn is, probably more so than Zack Snyder, gotten a lot of more backlash, just not even based on the films or the art or anything like that, just based on him, when in my opinion he has gotten the characterization of a lot of these characters perfectly, especially Superman. I really appreciated what he did in that film. So yeah, for what the movie is, it was a home run. Not perfect, but I wasn't asking for perfection. I was asking for a movie that got these characters right, had cool action, had cool cinematography, and it has all of that. And I didn't realize how later on this film would stay in my head and eventually save me during my darkest period. Okay, this is going to be take 2 of the Justice League Snyder Cut video. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a filmmaker. I'm someone who loves making movies, short, long, different genres, trying to be as versatile an artist as possible. I'm trying to bring a lot of my filmmaking techniques to the videos I produce. In 2023, I was working on a film called Golden Hour, and also a shorter film called The Shutter Angle, 2 movies that are set kind of in this world that I've been setting up that Poncho is connected to. It took a long time, pretty much all of 2023, but in October of that year, I finally had a premiere. We showed it in my backyard and everything, had a bunch of people. It was a party. It was the same night as the World Series, which was a big, loud night. So everybody was going into the films in a good way because the Dodgers won that year. And yeah, we had a really good time. At the end of that film, we had a little post-credit scene setting up what eventually would be Poncho.
Yeah, dude, wow.
That's hard as fuck.
I found out a couple days after the premiere, where we had a really good night and everything, that my father had passed away. I found out that it was earlier that day, on Sunday of October 27th, 2023. I was at work and he was in the hospital. He had been in the hospital for a couple weeks. He had a lot of issues that I didn't know about. And I found out that he passed away. I found out on the phone while I was here at home. My mom was with me, and we were in shock. We were shocked. We really had a trouble processing it. My father was not really present in my life. He never, I mean, I knew him, but there was a very big stretch of time where I hadn't seen him. I didn't know him, really. And it was in the last couple years prior to 2023 that I had started getting back in contact with him. It was around the time near the end of the pandemic of 2020 that we had met face to face and everything, and caught up, and you know, it was very awkward, as you can imagine. It was very tough. Yeah, it was very weird, an experience. And my father knew that I was into making movies and stuff. He knew I was at school. He knew I had a job and was with my mom and everything. And you know, we didn't get to do everything that we wanted to do, everything that we needed to do. And yeah, the day after I found out that he passed away, I was just at home and I was kind of numb and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to see or say or anything. I hadn't seen him at any point that year. And yeah, I thought about him. I thought about him a lot. I mean, obviously throughout my whole life I thought about him, but that year especially I thought about him. And you know, I was wondering why I wasn't reaching out, what was inside me that was keeping me from doing that. And I grew up with comic books, and it's probably because I was trying to fill in something that was missing throughout my whole life. A lot of these characters deal with father issues. Batman is a great example of someone who has a lot of issues with his father, a lot of closure that hasn't been met. Superman, Spider-Man, Hulk, all these guys are dealing with the same issues and everything. And yeah, I didn't realize how much that had shaped my love for comic books, how much of that influence had left, how much that had influence on me. Um, you know, I didn't really realize that until the last couple years. Um, so I guess it makes sense that the day after I found out my father passed away, I just sat at home and watched the Snyder Cut because I knew that it was a long film and that it would, take me out or at least keep me inside one area rather than go out in the world and who knows what I would do. I would have 4 hours to spend just sitting there and doing nothing, watching the film. And for those who have watched the Snyder Cut, you know how much that movie deals with fatherhood, especially in the case of Cyborg. Cyborg is someone who has a very similar kind of relationship to his dad that I had, and to watch the film where you see him lose his father, um, that was a lot, and that really did everything, that it was a lot. Like that character, I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to my dad. I didn't even know that that time was as close as it came. Um, for so long I had thought about that day, about the day where I wouldn't be able to say what I needed to say to the guy or say goodbye or whatever. I knew that this day was coming. And we all know that this day is coming with all our parents and everything. But I kept pushing it off that when I would reach out and just see how he was doing it. I thought I had more time than I did. And, you know, I didn't. But what happened while I was watching the Snyder Cut, I realized what next film I had to make after Golden Hour. And Golden Hour was fun. It was, horror film, somewhat horror film, kind of like a Tubi kind of horror film. And I knew that if I were going to do Poncho, especially while watching Zack Snyder's Justice League, I knew that it could not be something that was just about action. It couldn't just be about spectacle or whatever, me trying to prove myself. I wanted to make a film that was about healing when you don't think you can. Saying goodbye when you don't have the chance anymore to say goodbye. And if you've watched the film, I hope you got that. I hope you got that vibe from it, because that's the vibe I was putting into that film. And I felt incredibly motivated and I felt incredibly scared while watching the Snyder Cut, because I realized what film I had to make to try to figure out my grief. Grief is not an easy thing to deal with, but it's something we all deal with, and it's something we all struggle with. But you got to keep moving forward, is what I learned. And that's why I was so scared while watching that film, is because thinking about making Poncho and why I'm making Poncho, I knew I would have to do a lot of that work that is really tough and really fucking hard and really fucking, everything. It's so crazy to think this way, but I felt a certain amount of responsibility while watching the Snyder Cut in thinking about Poncho, and I felt a little bit of hope. Seeing those heroes get together and do what they have to do to save the day and everything, and thinking, hey, maybe I can make a fucking movie that can do what this movie is doing to me right now, but for someone else, that would mean everything. I would be lying if I said that the making of this film was like torturous or anything like that. It was frustrating at points, but honestly, I would not trade that time for anything, man. I learned so much. I had such a great time while doing it. We did such incredible, crazy things in the film. The movie turned out to be really timely. It meant something to people, which is the crazy thing. Like with films like The Podcast or Shutter Angle or Golden Hour, or films I've made previously, they're just like fun. They're for the homies and everything. But this, especially given the world we live in, this was for community. This was for healing. This was for my dad. I met some really great people while making that film, learned a lot about the craft of filmmaking, got inspired to work on more stuff and everything, and I found a lot of catharsis while shooting, editing, and eventually premiering. At the premiere, I was surprised by a lot of the responses I got from the film. People came up to me in tears. People who had come up to me and told me that they had gone through things like that, and that the movie really spoke to them and captured that feeling of not having enough time really well. And you should be really grateful to get that kind of reaction, man, because that's better than like a paycheck, at least for me. Maybe that's why I'm fucking broke. I got to work with a guy who I grew up with, who I look up to kind of like as a somewhat a father figure, Daniel. You know, Daniel got me into comics. Daniel had seen my whole journey growing up, knew my situation with my dad and everything, and always encouraged me to reach out even when it was uncomfortable. Reach out before it's too late, because sometimes it will be too late. Sometimes silence won't be enough, man, because there's going to be a silence after that where you're only talking to yourself and you're asking yourself, why did I not, why was my pride so fucking big? Why did I not take every opportunity to make every moment count with this guy? The dude shouldn't have left in the first place, but I'm a human being also, man. I'm someone who has a level of responsibility in this relationship. I'm an adult. I could do something here. And you don't want to stick in that type of rabbit hole of thinking, but there is a level of truth to that. I said at the premiere that I really wish my dad was there. I really wish he got to see the film, man, because just because, you know, just because. And circling this back to Justice League, I know Zack Snyder went through a really terrible loss while making that film, and I always felt really bad for him, but I just want to say, I know the chances of him watching this are next to none, but I just want to tell you, Zach, I'm so sorry about your loss, and I feel you, bro, and I'm really happy that you got to make the movie you envisioned, and thank you for making it, bro. Thank you, because it really helped me during a really fucking tough time in my life, and I watch it every year at the anniversary of my father's passing, and I'm gonna do that for the rest of as long as I can, because that film really, it made me think that it was possible to make the films I wanted to make for the people they should have been made for. So, thank you, bro. Thank you so much. Fuck. It's a really tough time in the world right now. Really fucking tough time in the world right now. I just want you guys to hold on longer, for as long as you possibly can, you know? One line in the Snyder Cut that really fucking spoke to me, and that I think about a lot, especially after my father's passing, is faith.
He'll be here, Alfred, I know it.
What makes you so sure?
Faith, Alfred. Faith.
When a character like Batman can say that, we all can say that. I really hope everybody who watches this takes care of themselves. Thank you for watching it. Please watch Poncho. I hope you get where I'm coming from with it. And yeah, bro. Have a good one. Stay safe. And happy 5 years of the Snyder